Style: educational, conversational, dark intelligence. In March 1918, a 542-foot U.S. Navy ship carrying 309 people sailed into the Atlantic and then simply ceased to exist. No distress signal, no wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. More than a century later, the USS Cyclops remains the single greatest non-combat loss of life in the entire history of the United States Navy. And nobody, not the Navy, not the government, not a single investigator, has ever been able to explain what happened. Here's what we're going to cover today. First, what the USS Cyclops actually was, because this wasn't just any ship. Second, everything we know about her final voyage, who was on board, what she was carrying, and why the route she took was already risky. And third, the theories that have emerged over the past 100 years, from German submarines to structural failure, from mutiny to something far stranger. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this case still haunts naval historians and why it may never be solved. Before you can understand what was lost, you need to understand what the USS Cyclops actually was. Because when she disappeared, it wasn't just 309 people, it was one of the most capable supply vessels the United States military had ever built. The Cyclops was a Proteus-class collier, a coal and cargo transport ship, built in 1910 by William Cramp and Sons in Philadelphia. She measured 542 feet in length and displaced nearly 20,000 tons when fully loaded. That's about the size of 2.5 football fields laid end to end. During World War I, the U.S. Navy pressed her into service as a fleet oiler and general supply ship. She was considered essential infrastructure, the kind of vessel that kept the entire Atlantic fleet operational. Her job was to move fuel, cargo, and supplies to wherever they were needed most. At the time of her final voyage, she was under the command of Lieutenant Commander George W. Worley, a man we'll come back to because his behavior in the weeks before the disappearance raises some very uncomfortable questions. The Cyclops was not a small fishing boat, she was a naval giant, well-crewed, well-equipped, and sailing one of the most traveled shipping routes in the world. Whatever happened to her didn't happen because she was fragile, which makes the disappearance all the more baffling. January 1918, the Cyclops departs Norfolk, Virginia, bound for Brazil. This is where the story starts to get strange because almost every decision made on this voyage seems, in hindsight, like a mistake. The Cyclops arrived in Rio de Janeiro in late January to resupply the South Atlantic Squadron. While there, she took on a cargo of manganese ore, a heavy, dense metal used in steel production. Her hold was packed with approximately 11,000 tons of it. Here's the first red flag. Manganese ore is notoriously difficult to transport safely. It's extremely dense, which makes it shift during rough seas. It can throw off a ship's center of gravity without warning. Loading the Cyclops to near capacity with this material was, to put it plainly, a gamble. The second red flag was mechanical. One of the ship's engines, a critical piece of equipment, had developed a cracked cylinder and was taken offline. The Cyclops departed on her return journey north, running on a single engine, half power. The third red flag was the captain himself. George Worley had been receiving complaints from his own officers for months. He was described as erratic, temperamental, and, according to some accounts, possibly sympathetic to Germany. His real name may not have even been George Worley. Some investigators later suggested he was born Georg Wichmann, a German immigrant who had anglicized his name. The Cyclops departed Barbados on March 4, 1918, bound for Baltimore. She was last seen by the lighthouse keeper at the northern tip of Barbados. After that, nothing. She never sent a distress signal, not one. And at the time, the Cyclops was equipped with wireless radio equipment. Even if the ship sank suddenly, the radio operator would have had time to send at least a partial message. The silence is one of the most disturbing aspects of the entire case. When the Cyclops failed to arrive in Baltimore, the Navy didn't panic immediately. Ships were sometimes delayed. Weather happened. But after a week of silence, they started to worry. And after 2 weeks, they launched one of the largest maritime searches in American history. The U.S. Navy dispatched warships, search aircraft, and civilian vessels across a vast stretch of the Atlantic. They searched the Caribbean, the Gulf Coast, the entire stretch between Barbados and Baltimore. They found nothing. Not a life preserver. Not a cargo crate. not a piece of debris. President Woodrow Wilson personally described the disappearance as one of the most baffling mysteries in the history of the Navy. And this was a president who was managing a world war, a conflict that claimed millions of lives. Yet even he was stopped in his tracks by the Cyclops. The Navy interviewed survivors from other ships in the same waters. They checked German U-boat logs. They sent diplomatic inquiries. They followed every lead they had. Every search came up empty. The ocean had swallowed 542 feet of steel, 309 human beings, and 11,000 tons of cargo, and left absolutely no trace. Not a single identifiable fragment has ever been found. So what actually happened? Over the past century, investigators, historians, and obsessives have put forward dozens of theories. Let's run through the most credible ones, and the one that most people refuse to dismiss. Theory 1. Structural failure. The Cyclops was overloaded with dense manganese ore and running on a single damaged engine. If she hit rough seas at the wrong angle, the shifting cargo could have caused a catastrophic list, tilting the ship so severely that she capsized and sank within minutes. A sinking this rapid would explain the absence of a distress signal. There simply wasn't time. Theory 2. The German U-boat. The year is 1918. The Atlantic is full of German submarines. Several ships were torpedoed in the same general area during the same time period. The Navy reviewed every known German U-boat log from that period and found no record of an attack on the Cyclops. Germany, after the war, explicitly denied any involvement. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Theory 3. Captain Worley. Some historians believe the captain himself may have deliberately scuttled the ship, either as an act of sabotage on behalf of Germany or due to some unknown personal motive. His documented erratic behavior, his possible German origins, and his history of conflicts with crew members have kept this theory alive for decades. But again, no proof. Theory 4. The Bermuda Triangle. The Cyclops disappeared in waters that now carry that famous, or infamous, name. Popularized in the 1960s and 70s, the Bermuda Triangle theory attributes disappearances in this region to everything from magnetic anomalies to methane hydrate eruptions to, yes, extraterrestrial interference. The scientific consensus is that the Bermuda Triangle is a myth. The region has no statistically unusual rate of disappearances, but the Cyclops is always one of the first cases cited by those who believe otherwise. Theory 5. Freak wave. Rogue waves, waves that appear suddenly, often twice the height of surrounding seas, were dismissed as sailor legend for most of the 20th century. In recent decades, satellite data has confirmed they are real and far more common than previously believed. A rogue wave striking a heavily loaded single-engine vessel at the right angle could capsize her within seconds. None of these theories has been proven. None has been disproven. The case remains officially open, one of the great unsolved maritime mysteries of the modern era. Here's what makes the USS Cyclops different from most maritime mysteries. It didn't just vanish. It changed the way the United States Navy thinks about safety, communication, and the limits of what it means to know where your ships are. In the years following the Cyclops disappearance, the Navy revised its protocols for cargo loading, specifically for dense bulk materials like ore. The risks of exceeding stability limits became part of standard training. The failure to send a distress signal prompted investment in more reliable, redundant communication systems. The 309 people who died on the Cyclops are commemorated at the Naval Historical Center in Washington. Their names are recorded. Their stories mostly are not, because there was no one left to tell them. Two sister ships of the Cyclops, the USS Proteus and USS Nereus, also disappeared in the Atlantic during World War II, both in the same general region, both without a trace. Whether this is a meaningful pattern or a pure coincidence has been debated ever since. What we know for certain is this. 309 people boarded a ship in Barbados on March 4, 1918. They had names, families, lives, futures. Some of them were sailors, some were passengers. One of them was a U.S. consul. They trusted that ship to carry them home. It didn't. More than a century of searching, theorizing, and investigating has produced exactly zero physical evidence. The Cyclops and everyone aboard her remain somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic, or wherever it is that ships go when the ocean decides to keep its secrets. The USS Cyclops is not a legend. It's not folklore. It's a documented historical event, a ship that existed, a crew that was real, a government that searched and came up empty. The mystery isn't that no one has tried to solve it. It's that after more than 100 years, the ocean still hasn't given us anything to work with. If you found this case as unsettling as I do, you'll want to watch our video on the Mary Celeste, another ship found drifting in the Atlantic, crew completely gone, with no explanation that has ever fully held up to scrutiny. Link is right up here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. New case every week. See you in the next one.